Hello friends, and welcome to a video about the basics of tracking, the equipment you're going to need, and the process itself. So I don't have anything written out, I'm just going off of the top of my head, so it might be a little jumpy. We're going to start with equipment required. You're going to need a tracking stick, which is just going to be a little dowel, or some people like to use trekking poles. And then you're going to need to have a couple of hair ties on that stick. That stick should be like 3, maybe 4 feet at the most, but no smaller than 3 feet. You're also going to need Right in the Rain and preferably blank paper or a tracker card. And you can probably find those on Joel Harden's website for sale. I'm not going to be providing any, but you're going to want that if it's raining. Just something to write with, a pencil, tracker card. You're also going to want biodegradable flagging tape, which for the first class I'm going to provide. And you're going to want a tape measure as well. And you're going to want a compass, or you're going to want to know what direction is what. So that's the basic equipment that we're going to need. Eventually, if you stick with this, you're going to be night tracking, and you're going to want a very low watt incandescent bulb. You need a bright, I'm sorry, not a bright light. You need a warm light, because all of these 1,000 lumen LED lights, even like a 200 lumen LED, it's gonna smoke your eyes. So they're hard to find, but those old cheap yellow flashlights with the warm incandescent bulb is what you're gonna need for night tracking. We're not gonna get into that for quite a while. People that stick with it will stick with it, and most of you will be like, I've been staring at the ground for 6 hours and I can't even see anything anymore, and this is mentally fatiguing, and I'm done. And that'll be it, but you'll know the basics at least. Okay, so that's about the equipment required. Now we're going to get into the process a little bit. When we run these transects, we're going to start off with really clear tracks, and I'm going to scrape the first couple levels of duff off the forest floor so I get some nice dirt, and I'm going to give you a nice little stomp, and I'm going to really sink those tracks in there. The reason that I'm going to do that is so that we can draw them. We need to measure them and draw them. So we're going to be taking all the measurements that we can from the back of the heel to the tip of the toe, the width of the ball of the foot. If there is a distinct heel, we're going to measure that. And then we're going to draw the track. And this is so we know that we're following the same person. And if we get a track that's clear later on and the tread pattern doesn't match and the measurements don't match, we got off. So we're going to draw all of that out on our tracking card. We're also going to mark the direction of travel and the time that we started tracking. We're also going to list the weather conditions. So let's say we're doing missing person, okay? From the time that person was missing, I need to know exactly what happened with the weather from then on, because that's going to affect the age of the tracks, how they become part of the earth again. So if it's raining, and I find a track that's well defined, if it's raining and it stopped raining, I found a track that's well defined, then I know that happened after the rain. If the heel mark and the lugs are somewhat caved in and look like they've been rained on, if there's dirt on top of a leaf, I know that it happened after it rained. If the leaf has been washed off, then I know that it happened before it rained. So taking the weather into account is paramount. So we're going to draw our track, then we're going to use our tracking stick to kind of gauge where the next track is. People have a gait. Usually for most men it's about 3 feet or less to the next footprint, right? So we're going to take our tracking stick, we're going to adjust our rubber bands to the size of their track, and then kind of at the end of that stick is about where the next track will be. So from the first track, we're going to take a little strip of flagging tape and we're going to put it on the ground so we know exactly where the last track is. Then we're going to go find the next track in succession. We're going to make sure that it kind of fits the profile of the footprint, and we're going to mark that at the back under the behind the track. One thing that's really important is you don't want to touch the track, you don't want to mess with it, you just want to look at it. We want to keep all of that evidence intact. Okay, if you're pulling sticks off of tracks to see if there's lug marks, anything like that, you're kind of messing the whole process up. You're tampering with the evidence and you're changing the track. So we're not going to do that. So that's the basic principle of tracking. That's it. You get low to the ground, you look for the footprint, you mark it behind it, and then you line up your tracking stick and go for the next one. Okay? So that's on the ground. Now we're going to talk about other things that are tracks also. There's vegetation that's being walked through. If you walk through a field of grass, the grass will go down in the direction of travel, and we call that flagging. So I'm looking at the tracks, but I'm also looking up for flagging. I'm looking for freshly broken sticks, freshly broken vegetation. And through many years of breaking everything in the woods and watching it age, you'll be able to gauge how long ago those tracks were made or those breaks were made. Now, let's say that it's a missing person we're looking for. Once we've established a direction of travel and based on terrain, we might send another team to circle around and cut for sign. And if they can get back on the tracks further up the road and the measurements all line up and it fits the direction of travel, then we're just going to kind of leapfrog like that. Of course, all of these things are scenario dependent. So if you're in a tactical situation, you're going to approach it a lot differently than somebody in search and rescue will approach it. Somebody in search and rescue is going to establish that direction of travel, and then they're going to send ground pounders to run the roads to find the person. If it's a tactical situation, then we can't really approach it the same way. Our formation is going to be different, and not everybody's going to be looking at the track. So for tactical tracking, you're going to have kind of one person on track, and then the other person or people are running security. It's a whole different ball game, and for this intro class, we're not going to focus on that at all. We're just going to focus on teaching you guys how to track. Now, if you want to do some tracking on your own, you absolutely can and should. Start off by scraping some dirt away, stepping in it. practice measuring and practice drawing, okay? And then you can also have somebody else walk and try to follow them. When you're tracking and you're with multiple people, it's important to have very distinct conversations about exactly what you're seeing. I'm seeing that there's a break here. I'm seeing lug marks. I'm seeing flagging. I'm seeing vegetation that has been crushed and it looks this old. Not, there's the track. You know, we want to get in and specifically define all of the elements until we agree on everything. Where the heel is, where the toe is, etc. So that's a brief overview. I hope that helps, and I look forward to seeing you guys out in the field. Okay, so I got my first track, so I'm going to go ahead and set my first 2 hair ties from the back of the front to the boot, approximately. Then I'm going to find the next track. It's hard to do with one hand. Next track is over here. So what I'm going to do is adjust my gait to about the back of that track. So I can put this on a track, kind of go back and forth, and it should be right about there. And I can mark this one, move up, confirm that's a track. I see lug patterns, lines around the exterior. I see a distinct heel with a U-shape, kind of horseshoe. I see the tip of the toe here and the back of the toe here. I see compression in the rocks, little pebbles. I see some dirt on top of this needle. I see that this leaf is pushed into the ground. I see that a lot of the rocks are pushed into the ground, so I know this very fresh. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that. And then I'm going to move my tracking stick up. And right about here should be the next track. So I'm measuring the gait. Gaits can change if they're running, obviously. But the next track should be around that stick somewhere.